evening, everyone. Welcome to the Halifax Area Historic Society. We are ready to start. Our guest is Jonathan Wert, who is going to be speaking on the genealogy of the Wert family, and plus he said he has numerous other different families in the area. So I'm going to turn this over to you and let you get started with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Before we begin, how many people have their history, their genealogy tracked back to the immigrant ancestor? Would you raise your hand, please? Get some idea of it. All right, about half already do. And you have published genealogies already. Still working on them. Never-ending job. Okay. Well, I'm glad to be here tonight. I appreciate the invitation to talk about my favorite subject and obsession. A lot of people think that those that travel and go through cemeteries and try to find out about the past are weird. I've had this habit for a long time. I started out many years ago when I was a kid by asking my father questions, and I started with 6 names, and I decided I like to run off in the summer, and I'm from Genealogy County, Port Royal, so I thought I'm going to take this on, and I'm going to start with the cemeteries where my grandfather is buried, and I'm going to track this, back as far as I can get. So with those 6 names, I started in Port Royal at Church Hill Cemetery, and I didn't know what I was doing, and had no expert help. I just thought, the only one who seemed to be interested is the elderly people. So I'm going to hitchhike, and I'll find out who the oldest people are, and I'll start interviewing them, and I'll take notes. So I did that, and I had no idea where I would end up when I left Genealogy County to get to Perry County, to get back to Kellinger over here in Millersburg, which was quite an experience for a kid I was never on the Millersburg Fair. But anyway, so I started, and I interviewed my uncles they were pretty old at that time and pretty set in their ways, and they let me know right away that I didn't know anything about the Werts. And I started to tell them, well, your name was spelled W-I-R-T-H. No, you don't know what you're talking about. And that one Wert was divorced. Oh no, he said, our Werts, we don't divorce. So anyway, I knew I was into trouble right there with the family. And I tried to tell them, I want to take you to these cemeteries eventually and show you these Werts. And he didn't want any part of me, and I couldn't know more than him. And like I said, they didn't know, they being his brothers and him, didn't know anything other. He was born in 1895. So anyway, I started back through the valley, and all these old timers told me go to Perry Valley, go to Greenwood Township. And so I hitchhiked to Millerstown, and I started out through the valley and started to interview people. And my grandfather was George Lawrence Wert, buried in Port Royal. He was born about 1875. So then I got down into to Greenwood Township, which is all this was leading toward Liverpool and the Millersburg Ferry, because they crossed the ferry up here out of Kellinger. So I got into Perry County and found my great-grandfather, Joseph Henry Wert, born 1843, served in war, the Civil War. And each time I came to Perry County, I'd go further toward the river. And my uncle said, they're Lutherans, you'll never find any of but Lutherans. Well, I found that my great-grandfather was a Methodist because his wife was a Methodist. So that threw me off, because I was looking at Lutheran cemeteries or hanging around them. So anyway, I get down to Center Township, down toward Liverpool Township, and I come up around the corner there, and just nothing but Werts in the cemetery. I was one happy person. Anyway, there I found that Jonathan Wert, which is my name, was born in 1814 and died in 1909, outlived 2 wives, and had 20 kids. But 5 of them was buried there. They don't back till my uncle asked. Oh no, he said, no way would we have a Wert in a family like that. Well, this Jonathan Wert that died in 1909 that's why my dad was born in 1909 and given the name Jonathan Wert. But he didn't know that. And so anyway, I just kept quiet, kept digging and taking all the names and dates off. And eventually I ended up, well, I'm at the river. Now where did they come from? So eventually I'm working myself across the river, the ferry, and I'm walking and I go up through Millersburg and I go out 25 and I hit the corner in Killinger and there's just Werts all over the place in those tombstones. Then I hit a gold mine there. John Wert, right around the corner. I thought, this has to be a winner. And I have all my notes and I know pretty much what I'm not doing much paper research at that time. But so I get in there and find John Wert, and here this John Wert, born at 1786, was the father of Jonathan, born 1814. I got in the back of it another generation. So I thought, well, boy, this is getting good now. I couldn't find any other. That's the New Salem, if you're familiar with Killinger. There was 3 churches. There's an EUB church, St. Jacob's, there's the Davids, and there's the Salem Lutheran Church. And there's 4 cemeteries. There's 2 cemeteries, one for the old Wert church associated with the Lutheran church, and the old church was back behind. So anyway, I'm in that cemetery there in the new church for the Lutheran, the other congregation. At one time, David's congregation and Wert's was the evangelical congregation. They used the same church. That's from 1770, 1790. David's church wasn't built in 1790. And that was a Reformed congregation. And back around the corner, there's an EUB church in the cemetery. Well, anyway, I didn't know this then. But I get going back into the corner there, and there's there's probably 100 tombstones there, and 30, 40 of them thrown off to the side of the cemetery. And there I found 2 more, and it was that John Wert that I found up in the new cemetery. His father, Johannes Wert, born 1758, died 1805. That was in the Revolutionary War. Didn't know that then. I didn't know who he was. I just took the dates down, and then over from him I found Johann Adam Worth, 1727, 1806, and his wife Eva Elizabeth Snow, 1730, 1800. So that's as far back, but I took those dates with me. Then I started my paperwork, which I wanted to find out, well, can I be lucky enough to go? First, I'm going to go to the passenger ship list. So I went to the passenger ship list, and I took all the words and wrote, and that's all spelling variations. I had to go back, and I got started with W-I-R-T-H. And I learned fast that they didn't know how to spell, so John Adam Wert, I was telling everybody, hey, I found him in the census. He said, oh, no, you didn't find him in the census. I've been looking for 20 years. And I said, look under Wertz, V-E-R-T-Z. So there's about 20 spellings of Worth, W-R-T-H. Most of them went to W-E-R-T, and they went to W-I-R-T, W-E-R-T-Z, and if you went to West and went West, when the women were chasing them, I found some that completely changed their last name. I'm still talking to the son of one now. So anyway, I checked the passenger ship list with another idea in mind, then I thought I'll check the 1790 census. So I had a list of about 30 words, all spelling variations, but I found one John Adam Worth. And then I went to the census, couldn't find him under Worth, but I found him under Wertz, V-E-R-T-Z. It said Dauphin County. I had Upper Paxton. I had it in the 1790. So then I tracked him to, I had the link all the way back established. In the meantime, I went to prove the line to verify and document by getting the church records, the birth and baptism records, the land grants, and everything. So John Adam Wert actually owned 800 acres of land where the Harrisburg North Golf Course is. Anybody been on that? Know where that is?
I know where
Right
it is.
outside of Killinger. And there was 2 old cabins, houses, when I started this on there that had been torn down. And, but anyway, he owned land clear back into Killinger, and that's where the original Wert Church got its name. He donated one for the church that housed congregations. I started to find things about the Indians. Then I tracked John Adam Worth back to Lebanon, which was Lancaster County, and I found that he came here in 1753 on the ship Two Brothers. I knew that much, but then I never really thought much about going. What was I ever going to go overseas or try to find them? And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Ingalls Notes and Queries. Very good source of information. A lot of errors in it, but at least you can get a good start there. So, or get some leads. So anyway, I took all the information down. I had his birth date and I had his death date, and the records that I found said he was from Württemberg, Germany. So for 20 years, I'm searching Württemberg, Germany, which is about as big as Pennsylvania. And I thought, I'll never find this guy. 20 years, I wasn't getting anywhere. And I'd done, by that time, and right now I have like, some of these people, their ancestor, here's Joe Haney's Wert's born in 1783 over in Stone Valley, and he married Catherine Garman, and there's a lot of the Wert's with a Z off that line. So I checked all these other lines to try to get a lead on this guy because I wanted to track him back, and the passenger ship list didn't say where he was from. So finally I got a map like this over here. I was looking at them to see who this guy lived beside. I checked all the spouses in the line, their surnames, and I began to find, that these people, they didn't move anywhere without someone else being there first. And the preachers were circuit riders. One of the earliest preachers to this area was Reverend John Michael Interline. He was born in 1726, died 1800. He's supposed to be buried under the pulpit at St. John's Church in Burysburg. So anyway, he was the first preacher at Wert's Church there in Killinger, and the records began in 1770. And then, like I said, 1790, Davids broke away from the congregation, and there's some history there that talks about the pioneers standing guard while the church services was going on, and they also used the old log church as a schoolhouse. By the way, there's some handouts over here if you want to know the events that happened from 1770 on, for example, that I kept documenting. But anyway, I worked my way back through the church birth and baptism records, the census records, and found that the ones for that old Wert Church, Salem Church, was in German. They're still there in the safe in Killinger, and it had been translated into English. So then I had a pretty good record from 1770 up. So I went in to verify each of the kids. Then I inherited things from people that went to reunions before I was born, clear back to 1820. And these people kept good notes, so I had that, and I had a lot of pictures. I don't even know who the people are. They didn't always name them. But anyway, I got that far, and then by 1996, I had something like, I went to the computer about 15 years ago. Most of my research was done before the computer. And I made up my mind that I had so many hours in this, interviewing people and stalking through cemeteries and doing things. There's tombstone inscriptions available, as you know, but it's not anything like, if you're a genealogist, you got to go in that cemetery and check things out. They probably missed something or got the dates wrong. So anyway, and I was in there with my powder puff, hit the old stones, make the pictures, shaving cream. And every time I came to Millersburg, I'd go in a little store up there and get meat wrapping paper and tape. Go up there and wrap those tombstones and use soapstone and take some new information back. But anyway, I get into those old records at that church and verified and documented the line back to John Adam being born 1727, but where? Then, when he came in 1753 and shipped the two brothers to Philadelphia, he stayed in Lebanon because the Indian uprisings were still going on here, and he came in, I found documents where he came in 1760 to 1770 and cleared the land there on that Lycanson Valley Golf Course, or the Harrisburg North Golf Course, and he kept a tract of land back into Killinger that he donated to the churches, where he didn't, the way it worked out was he didn't apply for a land grant, he had the church people apply for the land grant. For that, there's about 28 acres in there, and that was divided, all of Killinger was divided between the Reformed congregation and the evangelical congregation. So the old church was back around the corner. And but anyway, then all these things happened. I had it going at the same time because I wanted to restore that old cemetery. And the farmer wanted to plow it under. So he didn't like the idea that I was in there. And I told him, hey, I'm going to be buried in there someday. You can't take that out of there. So I thought, oh, I better get busy here real quick. Because he wanted those tombstones. In those days, the first thing I found was they didn't bury them necessarily man and wife. They buried them in a row according to the death. And often those tombstones fell over and they just they may be anywhere. So the husband may not be with the wife. So I had 28 tombstones in the back there in the poison ivy behind that cemetery, and I started to marshal the forces to get that. So I told some of the older Werts what was going to happen, and the donations started to roll in. I said, I'll fix that up. So anyway, I went and got some tombstones started to restore. I knew I couldn't restore. I didn't want to touch those old tombstones that much. Old sandstone and nothing. We got old. It just amazes me the amount of air pollution we have over these rural areas in Pennsylvania from the south and the TVA land. If you work tombstones, you'll see the deterioration of cement and things. It's terrible. If you want to look at the new cement out of Killinger and the condition that's in there, where in that cemetery where I had new cement poured just in the last 20 years. But anyway, I started John Adam Wert's tombstone, pulled the two out of the ground, stuck them in concrete, put a new piece in there, and the farmer came over and he said, boy, he said, you're really getting serious about this. I said, yeah, I put a couple yards of concrete in there. Didn't need that much, but I figured I'll put enough in there that if he moves out and plows the field up. So anyway, then I took Johannes Wert, the one that died young in the Revolutionary War, and again I found three of them. John Adam Wert had 9 sons and 2 daughters, and 3 of his sons served in the Revolutionary War. So I hurried up and got papers on them through the National Archives, all but one. I can't find where he is yet. And I think I know why. I think he's kids married Confederate generals, these girls. But anyway, Johannes, his son was buried in there, so I got the military, the bronze plaque. And next concrete job, I fixed that. And I pulled all the tombstones out of the back, and every time I go to Killinger, I take my tools with me and dig them in. So the 28 tombstones come out of the back there, and all of a sudden the graveyard looked more progressive, you know. And then the church had a program, and they even took more tombstones. I never saw this before, but I wasn't saying they were getting excited about it. Well, they pulled tombstones out of the old cemetery and took them up and put them around the church. Did you ever hear that? Well, that was news to me, but they were getting motivated, so they had, where you plant flowers around the church, they had about 25 tombstones laying out there. I thought, hey, you put them back, whatever. So anyway, my trick was to find, my way of tracking was finding John Adam Wert in the passenger ship list, tracking him in the 1790 census to a county and a township, and then running the church records, the birth and baptism records all the way back, which I had. Then, as I said, I inherited, people learned that I was working this, so they would donate all kinds of things to me, like family German Bibles and other records and pictures and family reunion notes. That they had a lot of the Wert reunions up at Crow's Ferry, I think they call it, a place on the other side of the river, and at the Millersburg Ferry. And the people that long dead before I came along, that were the secretaries, kept very good records. And some of the older ladies cut things out of the newspapers. I mean, that was a wealth of information. So this is all by hand that I'm doing this, still not up with the computer. Finally, I got the computer. Well, I decided that I was never going to try to sell anything. I couldn't make any money based on all the time. So I thought, my goal is to help people preserve their history and give this stuff away. Anyone that wants it gets it. So I purchased a software called Brothers Keeper, which is relatively very user-friendly. And I've kept that ever since. And I started in my book, I published the first book in 1996 with 15,000 names, and I now have 50-some thousand names. Mainly people in this area, the Upper Paxton Township, and spread out all over the United States. I plan to do another edition, a second edition, and have more biographies and things like that put in it. But anyway, I thought not many people are going to want that, so I ordered 300 copies. And this thing cost me about $48 a piece. Cost me just to have printed with a cover on. So I told anyone that wanted, I was going to sell it for cost plus the postage, which postage was about $3. So I had 300 copies, and I thought, God, I have these things forever. They're never going to move. Well, I have one line off of John Adam Wert. One son, John Philip Wert, settled in Mount Pleasant Mills. He married a Mennonite. And if you don't think Mennonites have money, the Mennonites come in my office in one of these books, and I said, how many do you want? I said, they're pretty steep. I said, $50. If I mail them, you come in, you get them for $48. He said, well, I need 19 copies right now. So I started selling. I only had 300 copies, and these Mennonites on this one line was documented in there. But anyway, they sold that in 2 months, and I should have had more printed, but I thought I'll wait and get some photographs and more research organizations. They were donated to a lot of historical societies and libraries and places like that. We donated them. But anyway, I only had to worry about unloading them 2 or 3 months. Now there are people fighting over them and want to buy my own. This isn't even my copy. This is my daughter. But anyway, so all the time I did this, I documented and kept my sources of information. And I have a data entry person who now lives in Florida. So I send my email to him, and I answer probably 20 queries. I'd say I get about 20 queries a week from this area. But anyway, finally, after 20-some years, I thought, I got to do something different on John Adam Wert if I'm going to find him. I'll never find him in Wurtemberg because of all the small towns. So as I was saying, I tracked the people that moved with him. A lot of these people moved together for protection. And the circuit rider preachers, like Reverend John Michael Interline, he would preach one place and then ride his horse go across the river and go up into Snyder County and preach in another. And the families, he'd give them the family news from the place he was before. And a lot of these churches were connected with one circuit rider preacher like Michael Interline. And so anyway, I thought, all these people that I'm finding, they're coming from the Palatine. I think he's probably from the Palatine. And with the help of some people in Germany, and you're familiar with Latter-day Saints, I got microfiche of different parishes. And finally, I found John Adam Wert, birth date in the parish records at Hosteinbach in abroad in Westerwald, which is a Palatine in Germany, which was a happy day for me. So then I wanted to get back as far as I could, so worked a little farther. I got back 2 more generations. And over there, and he could have come from Württemberg, maybe whoever wrote that up. He would have, John Adam Wert would have known what he's going, so people writing books 1850 surely didn't know, and if it's Württemberg, it's back before 1670, so I don't know if I'll ever get that far, but at the same time as I was working John Adam Wert, all these words are getting together here and I can't figure out who belongs to who, so I started working every word that was on that passenger ship list that came into Pennsylvania. And that's how we get to the Werts in Stone Valley. And then there was a Dietrich Wert early up in the upper end of the county, or up in toward Danville, and an early Ulrich Wert. But anyway, so I got the, then I went back and I got the military records, and I got the pension records, and I decided, well, I ought to fix this since 3 sons was in the Revolutionary War. I went back and got all the documentation, photographed all the tombstones, and just went ahead with the old John Adam Wert was already in the DAR records, so I joined the, what is it, American Sons Revolutionary War, Sons of the Revolution, and I had to have all the documentation to prove that, so I had the photographs of the tombstones, copies of the church records, copies of the military records, and the companies. Martin Weaver was a company up in this area, one of them anyway, and I had all that, so I ended up, but the tombstone restoration there for a while, I was over in the one that some of these people relate to. Carl, is that your name?
Yeah, Carl.
Well, Joe Hannes Wertz, born 1783, your ancestor, was right across the road from my one line, who his name was Joe Hannes Wert too. About the same time, born that, so we thought, what's going on here? They have to be related, but we could never prove that. And so that's why I worked that other line. But then I went back and see here, the old tombstones were white marble. I cleaned them off, painted some of them, painted each of the individual letters, and but mostly what I did was just replace, put new granite ones in, and put the old ones back just like I found. There's lots of tricks you can use to clean the lichens off of them, and then put the bronze plaques you get from the military in. And so I got that. Then I got birth certificates and death certificates back as far as I could in my line, and I started to write biographies. I told anyone that wants to write a biography for in this book, they could. I'm going to try to do that in the next edition of this history. Now, I don't know how many will come out, how many names will be printed, but I took the goal on of if they're married to a Wert, I took the Werts back before the immigrant. I'll take any line back there that I can while I'm living to the immigrant ancestor, and that's what really takes the time. So now I'm on line. You get some of it, but still there's nothing like. You still have to do the paperwork. A lot of stuff is not on the internet, and you got to watch what you get, because a lot of people were saying, I'm still getting, send me everything you have on Oscar Bailey. And people don't realize it. They don't say when he was born, where he was. They say, wow, how am I going to handle this one? So you get, and he says, send me everything you have on Tim Jones. Do you know anything about Joe Smith? So you got to write them back and tell them. You got to, or they'll place a query. I'm interested in Violet McPherson. That's it. Or they send you a letter. So anyway, since the internet, a lot of people want to get their history, and of course they don't want to pay for it. If you're not careful, you don't get anything back. And in my business, I got to get something back. and very few people cooperated. I'd hate to say. They're not happy when they see this, or when they write me and I send them a letter back. So you're Christian Goodman, born so-and-so, son of, and they go, how did you know that? And then, of course, they want to keep it. They want to keep it confidential if they're living, some of them. Then you get into a real mess. So if they write me and say, I don't want it, here it is, but I don't want it printed, keep it out, I say, okay, but I don't put it in the machine, that way it won't get it. And I'm not selling anything, but there's quite a few people that are trying to hide something. And then last week I found that John Adam Wert, one born 1755 in Lebanon. I can't find his tombstone. It was in the Revolutionary War. He is a son named Adam Wert, born 1790. And in 1802 he heads south. He goes to Washington County, Virginia. And I'm on his trail. And here I find that his daughter Nancy marries a General Joseph Beeler Douglas, the famous Confederate. I thought, I don't know how far I want to go here with this yet. Anyway, now I'm finding, I didn't have any idea that they ended up in the South. But anyway, I'm exploring that and headed across to, many of them were out. They went in the gold rush in the 30 to 50 time period. A lot of them were heading west. Of course, they came back or died out there. But anyway, that's pretty much now. Is there a Bill Dietrich here? Do you know Bill Dietrich? William Dietrich?
He's not here.
Yeah, now I have a lot of help from guys like that, and I have friends that have all the census information. So, and after 1850 up, the children's names are listed, so that helps a lot. But Bill Dietrich is one person in this area that helps. But I guess I pretty much told you what I know. If I had more time, I'd tell you some interesting stories, but some of them are pretty bad. Anyway, do you have any questions? I might be able to help you if you got a problem and you're stuck on any line. Yeah.
Do you have a web address?
Yeah, I'll give that to you here.
And you said something about, if I heard it correctly, Angles, Notes, and Queries?
Eagles.
Eagles, okay.
Notes and Queries. There's about 10 volumes. By the way, if you can ever buy any of those, if you can ever buy the original county histories or Eagles, Notes, and Queries, it's a collector's item. It would be good to have it. That if you don't know, it's amazing the number of early pioneer families that he has covered in there. And it's about 10 volumes. I think it's in the state library, in the genealogy section. And I don't know if it's for sale anymore, but it's pretty good. Because you're in this business, you're just taking something that gives you a lead and chasing it until you can find some other documentation for it. And those records, like the original German records in Killinger that are in the safe, would be worth an awful lot of money now. The Lutheran Seminary at Gettysburg usually tries to get those kind of things. But that's been translated in English. A lot of this stuff has been, and now the companies have picked it up. I give it away. Like I did the tombstone inscriptions for Wert's Church, Salem Church. They're online, and you can get those online under Dauphin County. Yeah.
Have you connected all of the words in this general area to John Adam?
Or Joe Haney's Wert's.
Spell the middle name, please.
The middle name?
Haney's.
Well, Joe Haney's, Johannes, or
Joe
Johannes.
First name, okay.
Yeah, that's the first name. John, that's John, the German. And then all the rest, like if they're German, it's usually John George, John Jacob, John Philip, John Peter, John Henry. But the other line in this area is Johannes Wertz, W-R-T-Z, born 1783, buried at Stone Valley, Zion Lutheran Church. And then my ancestor, John Adam Worth, W-R-T-H, born 1727, buried in Kellinger at the Lutheran Church. So those two, I've never found anybody in here that I couldn't connect. Plus, if you work out all the surnames, when you start coming up through 10 children, 11 children all born before 1780, you're into thousands of other surnames in this area in Lycans Valley.
It was interesting to hear you talk about the different spellings, because I've done some research. My grandmother was a Wert. She spelled it W-E-R-T, but she died when my father was about 9 years old. So, of course, I never knew her. But it was my assumption that the reason why there's so many different spellings is because people didn't know how to spell. I mean, they would hire somebody to do the census if they knew how to write,
Yeah, that's true.
not necessarily know how to spell.
Yeah. What was your mother's first name?
My grandmother, Verna, and she had a brother Paul and a brother Lawrence. There were several children, but those are the three that I can recall.
Where? Here?
My Uncle Paul lived in Millersburg. My Uncle Lawrence lived in Killinger.
Yeah, I had that.
Do you really?
Yeah. I can give you that history.
Oh.
Now, Paul Wert, he's deceased. Right?
Yes, he was the baby of the family. And
All of them,
he
yeah.
He died just a few years ago.
Maybe born in 1917 or so. Does that sound right? Back?
That was somewhere right, because my father was born in 1915. He's 88 now. But Uncle Paul and he were more the same age. I mean, Uncle Paul was a little bit older than my father.
Yeah, I know. I have that history.
Yeah, but Uncle Paul's my great uncle, of course.
Yeah. You have email?
I do, yes.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I can send it.
Excellent.
I should have brought the computer with me, but the surnames that are here, and most of the people that are on there, because if you see Schott, S-C-H-O-T-T, I know right away that Ludwig Schott was in the Revolutionary War and was here early. If you talk about Cooper, I know that Adam Cooper settled, there's a cemetery at Cooper's out toward St. John's Church, toward Killinger on out the road there. And usually I can take Bretz, for example. Ludwig Bretz was in the Revolutionary War. And I know pretty much all of them that were in the Revolutionary War. And so if you see a name on an early land grant map, I can usually place them, with the family, like Swiggert's here. And, but anyway, it's interesting work. Never get tired of it. And if you have kids or grandkids, you can get a lot of snakes in cemeteries. If you don't get thrown out, that's why you got to be careful with some places are getting really touchy about you getting even near a tombstone now. But if you powder puff and use your camera, that'll highlight the letters and you can get them pretty well worked out, including the Bible verses. And then this white marble, I think that's an old kind of limestone. And it's just eroded if it's before 1875. So you can hardly read the letters on some of them. Then you get the green lichens get on it and build it up and seem to eat it away. And you can't paint them. You almost have to go to granite to protect them. But I've had a lot of fun doing this and met a lot of people and heard a lot of stories. And you find all kinds of people in families, all kinds of occupations. And the interesting thing that I found early in the records on my family was that the people were more religious and almost religious fanatics. I remember reading one story where two girls, about 14 years old, wanted to go to a circus in Perry County. And their father said to them, their cousins lived in Perry County, and he said that you can go, but I'm going to give you an assignment before you go. And he said, I'll give you that assignment tonight. And while he's working in the fields, he was thinking about what he was going to have them do. And he had them, he knew the nature of the temptations that they would be under. And so he picked certain verses from the Bible. And then he marked the Bible And he said, now, next Friday, if you both can recite those to me word for word, you could go on your trip. And the letters that I found said that they hated that, but they had to learn, they really had to learn all the Bible that way. So that was one of the ways that they, and the old funerals where they talk about, in some letters in those reunion notes where they brought the body into the house, I don't think the embalmment says nothing about that. And the family cleaned the person, scrubbed them, and put the suit on them, and all the jobs were farmed out. One guy would say, "I'll make the tombstone," and two more would dig the grave. And I think it was just a box deal. It wasn't any embalming fluid early on, because the boxes are caved in today. You go over some of these, that cemetery up in Kellinger, a lot of those was caved in another state that I was in. I used to dig around in those cemeteries, and the pioneers, especially Tennessee and the hills there, they didn't have, they buried some people probably just buried up to 1940. And I'd be going through the woods. I used a steel rod looking for Indian graves, and mine's about 4 feet long, and a hammer. And if I saw anything that looked suspicious or looked like an Indian mound or a grave, I'd dig it up. And I remember one time, this was in remote areas, that I found that the old pioneers, they didn't have any money for funerals today. So I found this huge depression in the ground, about twice as wide as this table. And then over there I found little ones. You know, they look a yard, maybe 4 feet wide. Well, I thought, I got something here. I don't know what it's going to be, but I got to do some snooping. So they were out of there for years, so I started digging up. Well, that big one was the family cow. But I didn't know anything then. So I dig another one, it's the dog. So I keep digging, and I didn't have to dig much either. I mean, they didn't bury these people very deep. So I found a kid, I found an adult, and I'm talking no more than 3 feet under the ground with a skeleton still, you know. And then I found one breech birth, and I found one fella, he broke his leg, and the lower leg bone, and his leg bone, he must have fallen on it, come down the side. He must have walked on it or broke it and went down. And this leg bone, the one leg was shorter than the other one, and that bone had knitted. That was all smooth. His one leg was probably 3 or 4 inches shorter than the other one. And then in the same cemetery, I found these skulls of 2 of them, and right here in the front of the head, they had cuts like this. And that's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. There was some beads. There was indents buried in there before these pioneers. And I didn't know that I always was a kid, I thought they scalped in the back, they scalped in the front. And those wounds, the bone on the skull, where those cuts were, that's where they cut the hair off. They cut the skin off to take the scalp. So I got that confirmed in the museum, then they come in there. And the only thing that was there wasn't a tombstone, just those depressions in the woods, and an arborvitae. Well, if you find an arborvitae out in the woods, you know something. I always know something suspicious, because you shouldn't find arborvitae out in the woods, you know, unless no pioneer homestead was there. But this genealogy has led to a lot of different things, including catching snakes, and sometimes a lot of snakes in some cemeteries in the country.
Jonathan, did you ever make it to Germany? Did you ever go to Germany then?
I've been in Germany, but not there. I didn't go up into Barad and Holsteinbach. My brother did, and I went on to Russia and didn't go up there. I plan to do that sometime, but I don't think you're gonna I don't think I'm gonna find much, but I'd just like to go there to say I was there. You can't find old, the church is still there in the records. But today, you can get about everything you want without going there, so I haven't gone yet, but I will go. And I don't know if I'll ever get back before 16, I'm at 1670 right now. Like I said, I might go to work tomorrow. Any other questions? All right, how much time did that take? Half hour? 10 minutes?
46 minutes.
How many?
46 minutes.
46. I don't think I did that. No other questions? That's it then. You're welcome to look this stuff over.